Namaskar. Good evening, everyone. Namaskar. Let us begin with a prayer to Sri Ramakrishna. Om Tava Kathamritam Taptajivam Kavibiriditam Kalmashapaham Shramanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grananti Te Bhurita Jana. Om, your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. In the Bengali book, it is page 66. चतुर्थ परिच्छेद पूर्व कथा श्री रामकृष्णेर प्रथम प्रेमोन्माद कथा 1858. Krishna Kishore, Endedar Sadhu, Haladhari, Jitendra, Jai Mukherjee, it Rashmani. This is on the page 66. Okay. Anybody wants? What do you have? Nandan? In the English Gospel, this page 117, October 16, 1882. It was Monday, page 117. It was Monday, a few days before the Durga Puja, the festival of the Divine Mother. Sri Ramakrishna was in a very happy state of mind, for Narendra was with him. You notice that whenever Narendra was there, Sri Ramakrishna would be very joyful. Narendra would bring great joy by his very presence to Sri Ramakrishna. Narendra had brought 2 or 3 younger members of the Brahma Samaj to the temple garden. Besides these, Rakhal, Ramlal, Hazra, and M were with the master. Narendra had his midday meal with Sri Ramakrishna. See, in the Dakshineswar Kali temple, the corner room where Sri Ramakrishna lived, it's a small room, not very big. And there were 2 cots. And how all these people would assemble there, they would sometimes sing and joy, stand up and dance in ecstasy. All those things are happening in that small room. Narendra had his midday meal with Sri Ramakrishna. Afterwards, a temporary bed was made on the floor of the master's room, so that the disciples might rest a while. A mat was spread, over which was placed a quilt covered with a white sheet. A few cushions and pillows completed the simple bed. Like a child, the master sat near Narendranath on the bed. He talked with the devotees in great delight. With a radiant smile lighting his face and his eyes fixed on Narendra, he was giving them various spiritual teachings, interspersing these with incidents from his own life. You notice that Sri Ramakrishna would always be in a very joyful mood. That happiness that he was experiencing is not the ordinary happiness that generally people experience. Our happiness is does not come from the awareness of God within us. It comes from there, but reflected through the world, sense organs, other people, sense objects, other people. This is real ananda. Face was beaming with joy all the time. With radiant smile lighting his face and his eyes fixed on Narendra, he was giving them various spiritual teachings, interspersing these with incidents from his own life. Master, after I had experienced samadhi, my mind craved intensely to hear only about God. I would always search for places where they were reciting or explaining the sacred books, such as the Bhagavata, the Mahabharata, and the Adhyatma Ramayana. I used to go to Krishna Kishore to hear him read the Adhyatma Ramayana. Krishna Kishore was a great devotee, and he would read Adhyatma Ramayana, and Thakur Sri Ramakrishna would go there just to listen to the reading, chanting of Adhyatma Ramayana. So I would always search for places where they were reciting or explaining the sacred books, such as Bhagavata, Mahabharata, Ramayana. So these are sacred books which he enjoyed listening to the reading of these sacred books very much. We also do Adhyatma Ramayana study here every evening. I don't know if many of you know. Swami Atmajananda teaches Adhyatma Ramayana every evening from 5:30 to around that time. What tremendous faith Krishna Kishore had. Once, while at Vrindavan, he felt thirsty and went to a well. Near it, he saw a man standing. Krishna Kishore sees a man. On being asked to draw a little water for him, the man said, I belong to a low caste. Sir, you are a Brahmin. How can I draw water for you? How can I draw water for you from the well? Krishna Kishore said, take the name of Shiva. By repeating his holy name, you will make yourself pure. The low caste man did as he was told, and Krishna Kishore, orthodox Brahmin that he was, drank that water. What a tremendous feat. Elsewhere, Sri Ramakrishna has said, repeating God's name makes a person pure, both body and mind, even body also. If you repeat God's name with devotion, the holy vibrations that repetition of God's name generates affects the mind in a positive way deeply, makes the mind pure. Also, the body also becomes pure. So this Brahmin, Orthodox Brahmin Krishna Kishore, asked the low caste person to repeat God's name, Shiva, and that man repeated God's name, drew water from the well and gave it to Krishna Kishore, and he drank. What a tremendous faith. Once a holy man came to the bank of the Ganges and lived near the bathing ghat at Aryadaha. Once a holy man came to the bank of the Ganges and lived near the bathing ghat at Aryadaha, not far from Dakshineswar. We thought of paying him a visit. I said to Haladhari, Krishna Kishore and I are going to see a holy man. Will you come with us? Sri Ramakrishna asked Haladhari. Haladhari replied, what is the use of seeing a mere human body, which is no better than a cage of clay? Haladhari was a student of the Gita and Vedanta philosophy, and therefore referred to the holy man as a mere cage of clay. I repeated this to Krishna Kishore with great anger. he said, Krishna Kishore said, how impudent of Haladhari to make such a remark. How can he ridicule as a cage of clay the body of a man who constantly thinks of God, who meditates on Rama, and has renounced all for the sake of the Lord? Doesn't he know that such a man is the embodiment of spirit? He was so upset by Haladhari's remarks that he would turn his face away from him whenever he met him in the temple garden and stopped speaking to him. See, this Haladhari, he, he said he was studying philosophy books, Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta philosophy, and therefore he referred to holy man as a mere cage of clay. I don't remember reading in the Gita Sri Krishna referring to man as a cage of clay. It's a divine abode. He says the opposite. Kshetrajnam chapi mam middhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. 13th chapter, 2nd slok. The Lord himself says, I am present in the bodies of all the beings. Not only human beings, animals, plants, and inanimate things too is present there. How can I call it a cage of clay? The Lord resides here. The human body is not a small thing. Human birth is extolled as the greatest gift, Manushyattvam. And to look upon it as a cage of clay is not the right attitude. We should respect all bodies. Whatever be the nature of the person, but just seeing the human body should remind us of divine presence in that human body. Whether that person is aware of it or not, that is not our concern. Lord is there. So we should not call it a cage of. It is a cage of clay, of course, in a material sense. It is made of material matter, and the matter disintegrates. That is one aspect. But inside this, in this body made of matter, the Lord resides. Every moment He is there in everybody's body. So that's not right to call somebody else as a cage of clay, especially a man who repeats God's name all the time. I repeated this to Krishna Kishore. Krishna Kishore became very angry when he heard this one. With great anger, he said, how impudent of Haladhari to make such a remark. How can you ridicule as a cage of clay the body of a man who constantly thinks of God, who meditates on Rama, and has renounced all for the sake of the Lord? Holy person, repeating God's name all the time. We should respect that person. A person body, bow down to him as a abode of the divine. God is present there, seeing God. If we don't see God in such people, where else can we see God? He was so upset by Haladhari's remarks. Krishna Kishore was so upset that he would turn his face away from him wherever he met him in the temple garden and stopped speaking to him. Once Krishna Kishore asked me, why have you cast off the sacred thread? Sacred thread means the Yajnapavitam. Yajnapavitam that Brahmins wear all the time after the thread ceremony, Upanayanam, Brahmopadesham. It reminds us of the divine presence within the body. So such a sacred thing to have. And Sri Ramakrishna had removed it. He was not conscious of the body. Whether he was a Brahmin or non-Brahmin, whether Yajnapavitam Jana is there or not, he was not aware of it. His mind was soaring high to the divine level. So nobody consciousness. Once Krishna Kishore asked me, why have you cast off the sacred thread? In those days of God vision, I felt as if I were passing through the great storm of Ashwin. The footnote says, the master referred to the great cyclone of 1864. In those days of God vision, I felt as if I were passing through the great storm of Ashwin, and everything had blown away from me. No body consciousness. What to speak about the sacred thread? No trace of my old self was left. I lost all consciousness of the world. I could hardly keep my cloth on my body, not to speak of the sacred thread. I said to Krishna Kishore, "Oh, you will understand if you ever happen to be intoxicated with God as I was." Ordinary people, you are aware of their body all the time, except in sleep. During waking hours, always aware of the body, what is happening there every moment. Body consciousness, so deep within us. But for Sri Ramakrishna, his mind was soaring high above, not aware of body consciousness, where he was, whether he was wearing a cloth or not. What to speak of the sacred thread? He was not aware of anything. You will understand if you ever happen to be as intoxicated with God as I was. And it actually came to pass. He too passed through, Krishna Kishore too passed through a God intoxicated state when he would repeat only the word Om and shut himself up alone in his room. His relatives thought he was actually mad and called in a physician. Ram Kaviraj of Natagore came to see him. Krishna Kishore said to the physician, "Cure me, sir, of my malady, if you please, but not of my own." Love. So this is divine madness. People are mad after everything. Everybody is mad in this world, otherwise we would not be here. They're all mad. But some people are mad about money, some other about job, about money, about property, fame. Mad after something. But Sri Ramakrishna is mad after God. It's good to be mad after God instead of being mad after all other worldly things. Cure me, sir, Krishna Kishore said, of my malady, if you please, but not of my own. All left. One day I went to see him, Krishna Kishore, went to see Krishna Kishore, him, and found him in a pensive mood. When I asked him about it, he said, the tax collector was here. He threatened to dispose of my brass pots, my cups, and my few utensils if I didn't pay the tax. So I am worried. So what tax? A poor person doesn't have any property, money. Why? What tax he is going to pay? So only what all he had was a few pots and pans and things like that. I was worried. I said, Sri Ramakrishna said, but why should you worry about it? Let him take away your pots and pans. Let him arrest your body even. How will that affect you? For your nature is that of Ka. Ka means Akasha or space, one of the five Panchamahabhutas. Space means space comes closest to Brahman or God, especially in the Upanishads, the rishis talk about Brahman as nameless, formless, attributeless. So how to know that one? Even you can know an object if it has a form, some qualities, and if it can be seen, touched, etc. If it is possible to do transaction, vyavahara, with our sense organs, then we know it is there, we can know about it. But if something has no form or shape, formless, and no guna, it's not heat, hot or cold, tall or short, there is no such quality for a Brahman. Formless, attributeless, reality beyond the reach of the mind and sense organs. All we know is through the mind and the sense organs. If something is beyond the domain of the mind and sense organs, how we cannot know that one? The only way to know Brahman or God is by experiencing. Anubhavaika Vedyam. Anubhava means experience. Not by reading about it, not by touching it, not by seeing it. We can see forms of deities, Ramakrishna, Ganesha, etc. We can see those are forms. But Brahman is formless, attributeless. Ka means space. That means there is no quality, nothing, no property. Ka. It says here, infinite. How will that affect you? For your nature is that of Ka. Narendra and the others laugh. He used to say to me that he was the spirit, all pervading as the sky. Ka means sky. All pervading. He had got that idea from the Adhyatma Ramayana. I used to tease him now and then, addressing him as Ka. Sri Ramakrishna used to tease Krishna Kishore. Therefore I said to him that day with a smile, "You are Ka. Taxes cannot move you." In that state of God intoxication, I used to speak out my mind to all. I was no respecter of persons. Even to men of position, I was not afraid to speak the truth. At one stage, he was in that frame of mind. Whatever was in his mind, he would speak out without any uh, hesitation. What other people will say if I say like this, there is no such concern. Whatever was in his mind would come out in his as words. Even to the men of position, I was not afraid to speak the truth. One day, Jitendra came to the garden of Jadumalik. Jitendra is a titled aristocrat of Calcutta. I was there too. I asked him, "What is the duty of man?" What is the duty of man? Isn't it our duty to think of God? Jitendra replied, "We are worldly people. How is it possible for us to achieve liberation? Even King Yudhishthira had to have a vision of hell." This made me very angry. Similar thing happened when Sri Ramakrishna met Bankim Chandra. What is the duty of man? He said, to make merry and enjoy. Sri Ramakrishna scolded him. Is that what is in your mind comes out in your mouth? So similarly, here Jitendra says, we are worldly people. How is it possible for us to achieve liberation? Even King Yudhishthira had to have a vision of hell. This made me very angry. I said to him, "What sort of man are you? Of all the incidents of Yudhishthira's life," Yudhishthira was Dharmaraja, Pandava's eldest brother. "Of all the incidents of Yudhishthira's life, you remember only this. Only his seeing hell. You don't remember his truthfulness, his forbearance, his patience, his discrimination, his dispassion, his devotion to God." Dharmaraja his name was Dharmaraja, very personification, embodiment of Dharma. Would always follow Dharma, no matter what the consequences be. And led such a glorious, pure life. And of all those things, this is the only thing people remember. One thing people remember about Mahabharata is why Dharmaraja told a lie, that Ashwathama Hata Kunjaraha, that famous incident when Ashwathama was facing the Pandavas in the Kurukshetra war, fighting from the Kaurava side, was invincible. He was the teacher of all the Kaurava brothers, teacher of martial arts, archery, everything. How to defeat him? So Sri Krishna made a ploy. And he made Dharmaraja say, "Ashwathama Hatah Kunjara," you say like this one. Krishna said on the battlefield to Dharmaraja. Dharmaraja said, "Ashwathama Hatah Kunjara." Kunjara means elephant. There was an elephant. The elephant's name was Ashwathama. and somebody killed the elephant, and the elephant, Ashwatthama elephant, died. That's what he said. But when Dharmaraja said, have the sentence, Ashwatthama Ataha, Sri Krishna made a big Shankanada, blew his conch, and his last part of his sentence was drowned in the noise made by the conch. People heard Ashwatthama Ataha. That's what they heard. Oh, then they thought Ashwatthama is dead. Kauravas thought, and they lost their confidence. Ashwatthama was not dead. So this incident, people remember why Dharmaraja told a lie that Ashwatthama died when he was now only elephant named Ashwatthama was dead. Ashwatthama, real person, was not dead. Why did he say that lie? All his life he told only the truth. That also he told the truth. It was Krishna's ploy to in the war. These things happen. That's all they remember about Dharmaraja. But what the other good things that he did, they don't remember. So Sri Ramakrishna became unhappy when this Jitendra said that uh, he said, how is it possible for us to achieve liberty? Even King Yudhishthira had to have a vision of hell. Of all the what sort of man are you? Sri Ramakrishna said. Of all the incidents of Yudhishthira's life, you remember only this only his seeing the hell. You don't remember his truthfulness, his forbearance, his patience, his discrimination, his dispassion, his devotion to God. I was about to say many more things when Hriday stopped my mouth. After a little while, Jitendra left the place, saying he had some other business to attend to. See, this is normal human nature. A person does 99 good things. 99 occasions he helps us, one person. One time he cannot do. That one time he cannot help it. That's what we remember. We don't remember the 19 good thing occasions on he helped. This is human nature. So Sri Ramakrishna scolded Jitendra and he left the place. Many days later, I went with Captain Vishwanath to see Raja Shaurendra Tagore. This Raja Shaurendra Tagore, there is a note here. Raja is a title conferred on Shaurendra by the government of India. The word Raja really means ruler of a kingdom. The title given by the government to some people. Many days later, I went with Captain to see Raja Shaurendra Tagore. As soon as I met him, I said, I cannot address you as Raja or by any such title, for I should be telling a lie. He was not a Raja, he was not a king of a kingdom. It was a title that government gave. He talked to me a few minutes, but even so, our conversation was interrupted by frequent visits of Europeans and others. This Raja Shaurendra Tagore had all these connections with the British government people. They used to come and visit him. A man of Rajasic temperament, Shaurendra was naturally busy with many things. Jitendra, his eldest brother, had been told of my coming, but he sent word that he had a pain in his throat and could not go out. One day, in that state of divine intoxication, I went to the bathing ghat on the Ganges at Baranagar. The state of divine intoxication, I went to the bathing ghat on the Ganges at Baranagar. There I saw Jaya Mukherjee repeating the name of God, but his mind was on something else. I went up and slapped him twice on his cheeks. So he, at that stage, at one time, it was like that. Whatever was in his mind, it would come out. So he became unhappy when this gentleman, Jaya Mukherjee, was repeating God's name. on the not the here it is. Bathing ghat of Ganges, Baranagar. Sitting on the Ganges ghat, bank of Ganges, so this man was repeating God's name. His mind was going every direction. But his mind was on something else. I went up and slapped him twice on his cheeks. For ordinary people, this is what happens. You try to repeat God's name, do japa meditation, but mind is going in 10 different directions. And that is not meditation. There is a nice couplet in Hindi. I don't know whether it is Kabir's or Tulsidas, somebody. He says, describing an ordinary person trying to do japa. Mala to karame firai, jivi firai mukamahi. Mala means the japa mala, rosary. Mala to karame firai. It is the rosary is moving in the hand. Jivi firai mukamahi. The tongue is repeating God's name in the mouth. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, and mala is moving in the mind. Manuvato dahu disifirai. Mind is going in all 10 directions. Ye to smiran nahi. This is not smaran. Smiran means smaran, not meditation. People do that one because ordinary person's mind goes here and there. So this Dayamukarji was doing that, and Sri Ramakrishna went up and slapped him twice on his cheeks. At one time, Rani Rasmani was staying in the temple garden. She came to the shrine of the Divine Mother, and as she frequently did, when I worshipped Kali, and asked me to sing a song or two. She came to the shrine of the Divine Mother, as she frequently did when I worshipped Kali, and asked me to sing a song or two. Rani Rasmani, the owner of the temple. On this occasion, while I was singing, I noticed she was sorting the flowers for worship absent-mindedly. This sorting the flowers, mind is not focused on what Sri Ramakrishna was singing. She asked him to sing. Mind is everywhere. She was sorting the flowers for worship absent-mindedly. At once I slapped her on the cheeks. His priest, employed by the temple, and Rani Rasmani is the owner of the whole temple. She built the temple. So it didn't matter at that time to Sri Ramakrishna. She became quite embarrassed and sat there with folded hands. He understood. A noble lady, any other person would have become angry for being slapped by this priest. She became quite embarrassed and sat there with folded hands. Alarmed at this state of mind myself, I said to my cousin Haladhari, just see my nature. How can I get rid of it? After praying to the Divine Mother for some time with great yearning, I was able to shake off this habit. So it is embarrassing. Sometimes he would say and do things what was in his mind without regard to who he was talking to. That was the state of mind in which he was. So he asked Haladhari, and then after praying to the Divine Mother for some time with great yearning, I was able to shake off this habit. When one gets into such a state of mind, one does not enjoy any conversation but that about God. I used to weep when I heard people talk about worldly matters. When I accompanied Mathur Babu on a pilgrimage, we spent a few days in Banaras at Raja Babu's house. I used to weep when I heard people talk about worldly matters. It would cause Sri Ramakrishna great pain when people talked about worldly things in his presence. Not only in the presence of a holy person, at other times too, we should not think about worldly matters much more than necessary. Especially when a holy person is there in his presence, we should listen to what he says and think about pure thoughts only, thoughts of God, not worldly thoughts. Other times you can do whatever you want to think, but not when you are in the presence of a holy person like Sri Ramakrishna. I used to weep when I heard people talk about worldly matters. When I accompanied Mathur Babu on a pilgrimage, we spent a few days in Varanasi, at Raja Babu's house. One day I was seated in a drawing room with Mathur Babu, Raja Babu, and others, all business people talking about money matters. Hearing them talk about various worldly things, such as their business losses and so forth, I wept bitterly and said to the Divine Mother, what do they talk about? Your business people, their property, their losses and taxes, and these things they're talking about, and that caused great pain to Sri Ramakrishna. Even to hear about worldly talk would cause him great pain. Only thought about God. So pure was his mind. Hearing them talk about various worldly things, such as their business losses and so forth, I wept bitterly and said to the Divine Mother, Mother, where have you brought me? I was much better off in the temple garden at Dakshineswar. Here I am in a place where I must hear about woman and gold, but at Dakshineswar I could avoid it. You came to Varanasi. When you go to a holy place like Varanasi, place of pilgrimage, you should think about God. What to think about worldly matters? You can think about worldly matters where we are right now, but if you go to a holy place like Varanasi, place of pilgrimage, you should only think about God. But these people are talking about business. Where have you, oh mother, where have you brought me? I was much better off in the temple garden at Dakshineswar. Here I am in a place where I must hear about women and gold, but at Dakshineswar I could avoid it. Women and gold means the property matter, business, money, etc. The master asked the devotees, especially Narendra, to rest a while, and he himself lay down on the smaller couch. Late in the afternoon, Narendra sang, Rakal, Latu, Latu, there's a note here. A young disciple of the master who later became a monk under the name of Swami Adbhutananda, Latu Maharaj. Later in the afternoon, Narendra sang Rakal, Latu, M, Hazra, and Priya, Narendra's Brahma friend, were present. The singing was accompanied by the drum. The song, Meditate, O mind, on the Lord Hari, the stainless one, pure spirit, through and through. How peerless is the light that in him shines. How soul bewitching is his wondrous form. How dear is he to all his devotees. And the song continues. So Narendra was singing. And there are two songs. I'll just read them. After this song, Narendra sang, Oh, when will dawn for me the day of blessedness, when he who is all God, all beauty, and all truth will light the inmost shrine of my heart? When will that dawn for me that day? When shall I sink at last, ever beholding him into that ocean of delight, Ananda Sagara? Lord, as infinite wisdom, Thou shalt enter my soul, and my unquiet mind, made speechless by thy sight, will find a heaven at thy feet. When will this happen? In my heart's firmament, O Lord, thou wilt arise as blissful immortality, and as when the chakora beholds this rising moon, it sports about for very joy. So too shall I be filled with heavenly happiness when thou appearest unto me. Thou one without a second, all peace, the King of kings. At thy beloved feet I shall renounce my life, and so at last shall gain life's goal. I shall enjoy the bliss of heaven while yet on earth. Where else is a boon so rare bestowed? Then shall I see thy glory, pure and untouched by stain. As darkness flees from light, so will my darkest sins desert me at thy dawn's approach. Kindle in me, O Lord, the blazing fire of faith, to be the pole star of my life. O succor of the weak, fulfill my one desire. Then shall I bathe both day and night in the boundless bliss of thy love, and utterly forget myself, O Lord, attaining thee. Narendra sang again another song. With beaming face, chant the sweet name of God, till in your heart the nectar overflows. Drink of it ceaselessly and share it with all. If ever you if ever your heart runs dry, parched by the flames of worldly desire, chant the sweet name of God, and heavenly love will moisten your arid soul. Be sure, O mind, you never forget to chant his holy name. When danger stares in your face, call on him, your Father compassionate. With his name's thunder, snap the fetters of sin. Come, let us fulfill our heartless desire. Sorry, come, let us fulfill our heart's desires by drinking deep of everlasting joy, made one with him in love's pure ecstasy. Now Narendra and the other devotees began to sing kirtan accompanied by the drum and cymbals. They moved around, they moved round and round the master as they sang. Immerse yourself for evermore, O mind, in him who is pure knowledge and pure bliss. Next they sang, Oh, when will dawn for me the day of blessedness, when he who is all good, all beauty, and all truth will light the innermost shrine of my heart. At last, Narendra himself was playing on the drums, and he sang with the master, full of joy. With beaming face, chant the sweet name of God, etc. When the music was over, Sri Ramakrishna held Narendra in his arms a long time and said, You have made us so happy today. The floodgate of the master's heart was opened so wide that night that he could hardly contain himself for joy. When he when Sri Ramakrishna used to hear anybody sing devotional songs, especially when Narendra used to sing, Sri Ramakrishna would go into ecstasy. So pure was his mind that merely listening to the chanting of God's name or a, a song, devotional song, he would go into ecstasy. He became so joyful when he heard all these things and these songs, all these songs. You have made us so happy today. The floodgate of the master's heart was opened so wide that night that he could hardly contain himself for joy. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. Intoxicated with divine love, he paced the long veranda north of his room. Now and then he could be heard talking to the Divine Mother, Suddenly he said in an excited voice, what can you do to me? Was the master hinting that Maya was helpless before him, since he had the divine mother for his support? He was not afraid of Maya. So, what can Maya do to him? Ordinary people are ensnared by the power of Maya, but not people like Sri Ramakrishna. What can you do to me? He would say. Was the master hinting that Maya was helpless before him, since he had the divine mother for his support? Narendra, M, and Priya were going to spend the night at the temple garden. This pleased the master highly, especially since Narendra would be with him. The Holy Mother, there is a note here, by this name, Sri Ramakrishna's wife was known among his devotees. The Holy Mother, who was living in the Nahabat, had prepared the supper. Surendra bore the greater part of the master's expenses. Surendra, the note, the name by which Sri Ramakrishna addressed Suresh Mitra, a beloved householder disciple. He was one of the five supporters who helped Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and their disciples with monetary help because they had no other source of support at that time. There was no the five, what they called Rasaddars. Suresh Mitra. Narendra and Priya were going to spend the night. The Holy Mother, who was living in the Nahabat, had prepared the supper. Surendra bore the greater part of the master's expenses. The meal was ready, and the plates were set out on the south-east veranda of the master's room. Near the east door of his room, Narendra and the other devotees were gossiping. Narendra, how do you find a young man nowadays? They were talking about worldly matters. M and Narendra were talking. They are not bad, but they don't receive any religious instruction. Narendra, but from my experience, I feel they are going to the dogs. They smoke cigarettes, indulge in frivolous talk, enjoy floppishness, play truant, and do everything of that sort. I've even seen them visiting questionable places. I didn't notice such things during our student days. Narendra, perhaps you didn't mix with the students intimately. I have even seen them talking with people of immoral character. Perhaps they are on terms of intimacy with them. It is strange indeed. Narendra, I know that many of them form bad habits. It would be proper if the guardians of the boys and the authorities kept their eyes on these matters. So, all this was worldly conversation about students, what they are doing. And Narendra were talking about. Sri Krishna was not happy with this conversation. They were talking thus when Sri Krishna came to them and asked with a smile, "What are you talking about?" Narendra, I have been asking M about the boys in the schools. The conduct of students nowadays is not all that it should be. The master became grave and said to M rather seriously, they are in the temple in the presence of Sri Ramakrishna and they're talking about school boys. Not a good topic to be talking about, especially in such a place in the presence of Sri Ramakrishna. The master became grave and said to M rather seriously, this kind of conversation is not good. It is not desirable to indulge in any talk but talk of God. You are the senior, you are their senior, and you are intelligent. You should not have encouraged them to talk about such matters. M and Narendra were talking, and it was not proper subject of conversation, especially in the temple in Sri Ramakrishna's presence. So Narendra was then about 19 years old, and M about 28. Thus admonished, Just admonished, M felt embarrassed, and the others also felt silent. While the devotees were enjoying their meal, Sri Ramakrishna stood by and watched them with intense delight. That night, the master's joy was very great. He was very happy when disciples, especially Narendra, would be there. After supper, the devotees rested on the mat spread on the floor of the master's room. They began to talk with him. It was indeed a mort of joy. The master asked Narendra to sing the song beginning with the line, "In wisdom's firmament, the moon of love is rising full." Narendra sang, and other devotees played the drum and cymbals. Then the song begins, and the conversation continues. Sri Ramakrishna sang and danced, and the devotees danced around him. When the song was over, the master walked up and down the northeast veranda where Hazra was seated with him. The master sat down there. He asked the devotee, "Do you ever have dreams?" And this conversation continues. So this was that evening when devotees like Narendra M were present. He was very happy and he would ask them to sing devotional songs. And when he heard the devotional songs, he would go into ecstasy, experience great joys, and he would not like it when people talked about worldly matters, especially in the temple in his presence. So we shall stop here and let us say the closing prayer. ॐ निरञ्जनं नित्यमनन्तरूपं भक्तानुकम्पादृतविग्रहं वै ईशावतारं परमेशमीड्यं तं रामकृष्णं शिरसा नमामः. Om, we bow down our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May there be peace and joy in our hearts, Adhyatmika Shanti. May there be peace and harmony amongst all beings, Adi Bhautika Shanti. And may there be peace everywhere in nature, Adi Daivika Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sarvam Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you all. All of you stay well. God willing. See you next week. Namaskar.